Spread the fire, Ayeye. Welcome back to SMWX. And I think this might be the latest ever. We have Head of Elections for the ANC and National Minister of Twitter as well.
Twine Minister, yeah.
Mr. Fikile Mbalula, Tata, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, yes.
Great to see you in person and not on the Twitter streets.
Yes, it's great, Sizwe. We always exchange, me and you, but it's good to see you. Yeah.
I don't think people know there's a jovial relationship, but Ayeye too has really been causing some problems with posting pictures of me at rallies and saying I'm definitely voting ANC. So now my family is disowning me.
No, he was dipping in the crisis and bringing about disunity. So we're testing the strength of the Mpofus.
No, but as I can say, unity and renewal in the family is key.
Yes,
so don't worry.
Absolutely. Yes.
Mr. Mbalula, thank you so much for joining us. You have been at the center of one of the most eventful campaigns in the ANC's history. What has it been like to be the person leading the ANC's campaign in this eventful election?
Well, it has been an honor, but also a big challenge. So it was like I'm going back to the school of manhood for the second time. In a way, so diyogoluka kwesibini, so bendoluso, diphindile. But well, personally, I do like challenges, and I do like to contribute, and I work with the collective. And first thing what I did was to put a strong collective around me, and to work with on day-to-day basis.
Sure.
So I didn't look back, and I think it's been a big thing. Backdrop of biggest punishment in the last election.
Sure.
And we had to reverse that because we were going down and down and down all the way, and we knew it was going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So the design and the strategies we adopted were informed by the fact that this is not an easy way out. It's totally difficult, and you're not going to talk to people who will simply just dance to you and follow you and all of that. But that's it.
And how are you feeling? The results are streaming in now. The CSIR's projection is putting you around 57, so the high 50s. In some ways, I think your best case might have been a 60, 61, but there was also some talk of 55. You're kind of in the middle. How are you feeling about the way the results are going right now?
Look, it talks to what we knew, because to us, polling research is a science, campaigning is an art.
Sure.
So we knew that even our own polling was putting us slightly above 61. But the main objective for us has been to register decisive victory, majority to be able to constitute government, not through coalitions, and govern well, and do all the things that we said we want to do in our 66-page manifesto. And those polls, wherever they came from, they were in our radar all the time.
Sure.
And we knew where our biggest challenges within the middle strata, and somehow among the youth, particularly those who were born in the 2000, and all of that, but young people from 35 up were positive about the ANC. But those who were coming in, there were a lot of question marks, and which I believe that one political party became a big beneficiary of the new voters who came in. We still have got to look at that and the data and so on and so on. But what I'm saying is that we knew what we were approaching, and we are not shocked or not surprised by the result on the board at the present moment.
Yeah. I want to talk about what might happen after this election, and let's start with the ANC. There's a view that there's a counter-attack in the making, that after this election, disunity will grow. On the other hand, there's a view that the president, who now might be able to start forming a government, will gain more strength within the movement. You have, maybe more than anyone, read the tides in the ANC better than anyone over the last few election cycles. What's your view of where the ANC is right now and where it will be after this election, now that the picture is becoming clearer?
The ANC must become a party that is decisive in terms of implementing its commitments, We have worked hard to win the trust of the people. We don't know where they will put us later today in the board, but it looks good. It means that trust is coming back, and we need to sit down and analyze it properly. There's no more time to waste with regard to shenanigans by individuals, groups, and factions. We've got to be decisive on the economy in terms of creating jobs, but speeding up growth in relation to transformation and ensuring that our people can feel this ANC and feel this change. A perception to a point our people believe that we have not done anything in the past 25 years is dangerous for any liberation movement. So it was almost creeping in, despite the good work the ANC have done. It was undermined by the narrative that we don't care, we care about ourselves, we are corrupt, and all sorts of things. We need to push that back seriously. We can't afford, as much as we are a big party, we accept dissent, we can't coexist with anarchy in the party. We've got to be decisive with regard to that. Discipline must reign. Yes, there are people who make views that those who will not be in cabinet are going to start to break into formations in the party. But people must understand at the end of the day that we didn't come here for positions. We've got to reduce cabinet. Okay. And that is what is going to happen. We're going to discuss that. Yes, we're going to do that. We have said that to our people. Yeah. President Ramaphosa, when he came in, under the auspices of our National Executive Committee after Nazareth, given the harsh economic conditions we live in, we've got to cut down on cabinet, bring efficiency into government and competence, and deliver visibly, so that everybody can see. If DA can sell a story to the whole country that they are governing and governing well, and everybody believe it in Cape Town, why can't the ANC do that? We've got to focus on local government. Local government, local government, local government. In the wall-to-wall campaign, it did become very evident and clear that we've got huge challenges at the local level with regard to our public representative not being responsive and how we deal with the people and all of that. We've got to change that as a party. And one would like to work within a collective to contribute to turning the tide in the ANC.
At various times in your life in the ANC, you've been part of a youth leadership. You've now moved into a newer generation of, I would say, almost mid-veterans in the ANC. And there's a new generation of young voices emerging in the party that I think are exciting young people. We're sitting back and watching, but we're hoping that that new generation rises. What's your view on youth participation in politics, and especially in the ANC? Do you think we'll see a greater generational mix in the ensuing period?
We do have a generational mix at the present moment. The whole group of us came from the Youth League. We're approaching our 50s now. That is generational mix. When you talk about young people's growth in terms of leadership, that is coming in the party. And at the end of the day, we see that through the younger faces that are coming through, but they are not nurtured into their organization. We've had a lot of challenges with the Youth League. And thanks God, the elections are over. We can focus on building the Youth League. Because young people need their leaders to speak through their leaders, not through us. I cannot be seen to be addressing campuses and addressing young people and all of that. Yes, I can invite it, but I've played my part. Young people need in for their leadership. And that is where the EFF is beating us, because they've got young, successful leadership, which I call it at some point what is supposed to be the Youth League of the ANC, and occupying that particular space and so on. We have worked hard to win campuses ourselves, going to address students and so on. But it can't be replaced by that. It must be youth leadership that is at the forefront. So we're looking forward to having the Youth League, and that's it.
Tata, thank you so much for joining us.
Let's have a long one next time.
Yeah,
yes, all right.
Tata,
thank you very much.
Spread the fire, Ayeye. I'm here with Prof. Nahua Mundo, who is the Executive Manager of the CSIR. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The CSIR's projections are really interesting and incredible, and I think people don't actually know how good they are as soon as we get to a certain level. Just take us through the headline projections of where you see this election going, with more than 42% of VDs now reporting.
Maybe let me just start by saying we've been talking about our projections from early this morning. I think from 5 o'clock, I think 4 o'clock we had our predictions. And from that point, nothing much has been changing in terms of the big parties.
Sure.
Because typically when we project our results, we project them within the, we try to have them within an error margin of 1% or so.
Sure.
At the moment, if you look at where we are going, almost everything seems to be converging. So what you see on the screen now pretty much is going to be the final result in most of the bigger areas. And that's what's likely to be the final outcome.
Sure. So we're seeing...
So of course we're seeing ANC winning, we're seeing DA coming second and so on. So nothing much is changing. Maybe there are certain areas where one can talk to.
Okay.
One of them being Johannesburg, or rather Gauteng as a whole. Where if you look at Gauteng, ANC is very likely to dip just below the 50%. If they're lucky, they can go to 50 point something, but nothing much more than that. So it's going to be around that line.
So just take us through your model so our subscribers can understand exactly what it is that you do and why the accuracy of your results is different from a poll before an election, for example.
Yes. So essentially, our model is not a polling model. It uses real data. So what we do is that, to start with, we use the previous elections. So in this particular case, we use the 2014 elections. We study the patterns, or the voting patterns of various districts. We'll say, I know people in voting district 1, they might vote the same way as people in voting district 25. You may recall we have about 23,000 voting districts. So we map each one of those 23,000 voting districts to another one. We then put the ones that have similar voting patterns into what we call clusters.
I see.
Once we have these clusters, we drop away or we throw away all the data of the previous election. We just then stay with the relationship between the clusters.
Right.
Then what happens is that as soon as the first results come in, we can populate or place that within a particular cluster, and automatically we can then populate any other district that votes in a particular way. In no time, we then start having a good coverage of the map of South Africa. And that's what then happens. So within about 3% of the results to 5%, we then sort of have the full land cover of the whole country, and then we can then sort of tell how the results are going to go.
And just to say, it sounds like magic, but I remember in 2016, I came straight to your office the day before the official results were announced, and I got results that were within 1% of the results. So we're really talking a very serious convergence now, and we can very confidently suggest that this election is going in the direction that you're converging at.
Absolutely. I'm very much confident. I know nothing much is going to change. Typically, as I said, within that 1%, 2% error margin, if there's any error margin. But at the moment, I'm so convinced that we're going to converge where our predictions are saying.
And nationally, ANC is around
57%. I think I can say with no doubt, it will struggle to cross the 60% line. So even if you added the 1% margin, we're likely to sort of see the ANC ending at 57 plus minus 1, either way.
And so, as you say, within 3 to 5% of VDs, you can already start getting a very accurate picture. We're at like 42% of VDs now, so we really are starting to converge on final results.
Absolutely, and we have not been changing that much over over the bulk of the day, because our model had converged already much earlier.
Well, we are keeping our subscribers up to date with your model as regularly as we can. Thank you so much for explaining, and it's been great to speak to you.
Thank you indeed, and thank you for having me on the show.
Ayeye.
Awesome. Sure, thank you.
Spread the fire, Ayeye. Welcome back to SMWX, and I'm here with Oliver Dickson, one of the finest political analysts in our country, and you've seen and heard him on various media platforms. Bro, thanks for joining SMWX.
It's a pleasure, man. I've been waiting.
I know.
Finally.
And here we are.
here we are.
Yo, so tell me, what has been the most interesting thing you've seen on election day?
So I was broadcasting on radio from 1 a.m. this morning till 4 a.m. For those who don't know, I'm a radio broadcaster on 702.
Sure.
Right, so I took calls from a lot of South Africans from 1 a.m. this morning saying, look, I'm awake because I have no idea who I'm going to vote for in the morning. It's been keeping me up all night. And I was just going through the motions with a lot of these people. And much like the 2.2 million South Africans who don't know who they'll be voting for, I'm one of them, right? So I went and I did my radio show, went and did some television after that. And then after that, I went into a couple of voting booths. The first one I went to like posh suburbia South Africa, where money lives, and I went to State City and interviewed a lot of people, and I'd say people on the upper side of our class divide, and they have a different demeanor about this voting process.
Own voting booth.
Yeah, they have like right outside State City at the gate. They have their own voting booth. But there was a mixture of older black South Africans and older white South Africans, and you could see the clear divide in what they found, to be their political home, for instance. A lot of older white people sticking to their liberal roots, having voted, for the Democratic Party, in 1994, having voted in DA in 1999 going forward. And then I went off to Wits, and I went and spoke to people who are first-time voters. So I spoke to people who are only voting for the first time, people who are 18, 19, and 20, 21 for the most part. And they were afraid, bro. Like, it was interesting that a lot of the fears they had resonated so strongly with me. A lot of young people saying, look, I'm going to vote, but I won't be entirely happy with the decision I'm making. I'm like, I have the same anxiety. I haven't voted yet. I'm still about to go vote. But for me, the decision I'm going to make is that I'm going to vote for a party that I least regret having voted for. Everybody's going to regret the decision they've made.
For sure.
The party
it's about minimizing that regret.
It's about minimizing that regret, right? And so for me, it's that's the calculation I'm making this time around. And I'm not doing a split vote like I did the last time, for instance.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, like, how do you analyze what this election means for our country, and how do you think this election is different from the other elections we've had?
I think this election, more than anything, is a referendum on our social conscience and our moral compass as a country. A lot of people say it's a referendum on the ANC. I think it's more a referendum on every single party. It's this election forced every 48 of those parties on the ballot to reflect quite strongly into. Okay, maybe I'm stretching, not all 48 of them, but it's certainly the parties who've been on the ballot for quite a while. They had to really reflect, similar to the ANC, because there's 9 million South Africans who just didn't pitch, who are eligible to vote, didn't register, and so you have to at some point ask yourself, why was I unable to capture the hearts and minds of those 9 million people? And then you'll have to realize perhaps your message is not resonating as strongly as you think it does. So everybody has to reflect. I think this election in many ways will determine what our political conversations will be like going forward, because every election was, the DA got a bit more seats, the ANC lost a couple of seats. And DA got a bit more seats, and and every once in a while there's a new player on the block. So it was Cope the one year, then was the EFF the other year. I think this time around there's no new player on the block. There's no new player on the block that at least threatens the political establishment, right? So this one is an election that really all the players have been on the block for quite a while, at least at the top, and they really have to ask themselves some hard questions. And I think us as citizens also had to ask ourselves hard questions for the first time in a long time. I think many South Africans didn't vote blindly. I think we're a very politically engaged country. I think we perhaps the most politically engaged country in the world, I would actually say. And even as voters, we had to ask ourselves hard questions this time around ourselves.
So just finally, what are you going to be looking out for tomorrow? What kind of scenarios do you think will be like, okay, if the ANC gets this, then they're in business? Or like, wow, if the DA does this, then it'll be a good or a bad election for them. What are you looking out for as these results start trickling in from tomorrow?
I think more than anything, there's not going to be a significant change in the numbers. I think the DA will dip a little bit, but nothing lower below 20%. I think the ANC will dip a little bit, but nothing lower than 58%, 59%. I think the EFF will obviously double in its size entirely, but nothing over, say, 15%. But those numbers don't matter as much as how we're going to view it, because I think a lot of these political parties are going to litigate the results of, here quite strongly, because the IEC, as we heard today, has admitted to some of the administrative flaws they have, and I think that's going to give rise to really litigate it, and a court process is going to have us reflect on the value of our vote in the same way a lot of Zimbabweans did last year when Nelson Chamisa lost by 0.8%. And then people said, oh, if only I voted, I could have swayed it. And people realized that the single votes can actually sway an election, and it's pretty much going to be exactly that.
So hope we can just touch base again as the results start flowing in.
Yeah,
But thanks for
man.
joining us, bro.
I'm here all week.
All good. Ayeye.
Keep it burning.
SMWX. No young people are around the decision-making table. Let some new voices come to the fore. Follow us on WhatsApp. Catch us live Tuesdays and Thursdays. Out with the old, in with the new. SMWX.